Okay, welcome everyone from Victoria from Amsterdam here from Codam. Today we are going to have a CodamX session on demystifying DevOps together with software engineers from Cloudflight. We have a very interesting crowd of attendees, I have to admit. We have students joining us from different corners of Europe, from Lisbon, Rome, Madrid, Urduliz, if I pronounce that correct, even Lyon. So welcome everyone. For those that never been before to a CodamX session, CodamXs are basically events where professionals showcase the projects and the different tech that they use on their daily basis. And they also explain, the companies that they're working for. So it's a great way for you to get inspired into what cool companies are there in the market, and as well as link it towards the, how does it feel to work as a software engineer, right? Today we talk about demystifying DevOps, as mentioned earlier, and we're going to dive more into the daily struggles of a software engineer working in a team, in a real team, right? And we have Paolo Tran and Müller joining us as speakers. Paolo Tran is a software engineer at Cloudflight. He actually studied computer science in Italy. So Paolo, you see, we're going to have a couple of students from Rome here, so that's kind of nice. You're going to preach to the choir, I guess.
That's good, that's good.
Previously, Paolo, you worked for Formula One. How cool is that?
Yeah.
At least I'm a big fan.
I will also talk a little bit about that during the presentation, so there will be time also to mention that.
Fantastic. And we also have Müller, who is site reliability engineer at Cloudflight, and he's a big fan of automation, especially when it comes in the context of infrastructure, right, Mikael?
Yep.
Okay, with no further ado, guys, I want to pass the word to you. Who would like to start?
Yeah, Michael.
Yep,
okay.
I will just share my screen. I hope everybody can see that now. And then we begin this crazy ride. Okay, so today about the transition from being a student to being an employee and starting basically your first job. We will first introduce ourselves and the company we represent here, then talk about the feelings you might experience when you start a job, then what are actually the differences beyond the feelings, and then we talk a little bit about clean code, but in a pragmatic context, so not your ivory towers. And after that, we will finalize the main topics with a short story time. And then we will start right ahead with the first point with us. Basically, we were already introduced. So everything that's left to say, at least for me, is that I just graduated 3 months ago. I'm a little bit longer with Cloudflight, actually, but my master's is just 3 months ago. And this is not the content of this presentation, but if you have scientific questions like how should I formulate something, how should I write something, how should an outline look like from a bachelor thesis, master thesis, let me know. I put my website here, so contact me if you have any questions. Yep, and then to you, Paolo.
Yeah, so I'm Paolo, and my full name is actually Paolo Tran, but of course, Paolo is more than enough. As Victoria already mentioned, I studied in Italy since I'm from there, but I joined Cloudflight in Amsterdam since a year and a half already. And today I would like to take the chance to talk about Cloudflight and about our daily life as engineers in Cloudflight. So first of all, just quick company overview for Cloudflight. We are more than 300 employer in the company, and we are going from software developer to cloud architects, digital strategists, marketing, people operation, etc. And so we are an IT company which provides digital service from consulting to development to operation. And cool thing, we have multiple offices across Europe. So the company is based in Austria, but we have also location in Amsterdam, so the Netherlands, in Romania, and in Germany. Of course, we provided a lot of software already. So we have since 2005 more than 600 projects delivered. And yeah, so if you want to know more, you can check out our website on cloudflight.io, but we will see that also afterwards. Without further ado, let's dig into our topics. So first topic is cold water. What do we mean by cold water? Well, it's that feeling when you have to start a new experience and you don't know exactly how it will bring you, basically. And how does it feel then to begin with a new job? I guess that since you are now currently studying, for whoever is going to be close to the end, you're kind of excited for the fact that, yeah, you're finally there, you finally reached the end of this path, and you are ready to go for a new ride, which is starting a new job. And I feel like one question that resonates with many people, and at least it was for me, is, am I really, though, confident and competent enough to start with a new job? Because you see the posting, you see a lot of requirement, you feel like, yeah, I did something about this, but am I really capable of that? Well, as you can see, my short answer to this is no, but, and there's this but, do not worry about this, because that is intended. So when you start, you are all excited, and then maybe one of the things that you face with your new job is that you have a completely new technology stack, which is different from whatever you were used to during your studies. And then you have to still learn something from scratch, even though, of course, all your studies is your foundation for this. And another thing that then you will have to adjust is, for sure, the fact that you need to, I'm sorry about that. You have to rely on your colleagues, which is something that you didn't do that often, at least during the studies, because that's more of your personal path. And you do not have to worry also for the fact that maybe not all the jobs are perfect, but you know, it's all about experience. And that's what also Michael now will follow up with.
Yep, exactly. So what you, at least in my opinion, you need to do in the beginning of your career is to get experience, and also to find out what do you like and what you do not like. That's also very important. You just don't always follow the, oh, I need what I want. It's also very handy to know what you do not want. And for that, you should experiment, of course. And by that, I mean changing perhaps cities, if you think that would be beneficial for you, or changing countries, like I did. Normally, I would now work in Germany, as I finished my studies in Germany. But now I'm here in the Netherlands working for an Austrian company. Another thing is that you could try different company sizes, like very large ones, mid-sized ones, very small ones, maybe even some kind of a startup where everybody knows everyone, which is not, you can do it as bit with 360 people like in Cloudflight, but it's getting harder. And also maybe you want to try out some different roles. For example, when I started at Cloudflight, my initial role should actually be software developer, but then we saw the qualifications and there was an open position. So I tried out site reliability engineer. And now I have to say that this is the perfect fit for me. It couldn't have been better. And the good thing about Cloudflight is that you can actually try yourself out, because we have so many offices around Europe. You can go to Frankfurt, for example, for a few weeks, for a few months. You can go to Vienna. Everything is possible. And also the role changing is also possible with a bit of notice, I guess. But it's absolutely doable if there's a slot free. And the other thing is, you should ride the waves as they come. So at the beginning of your career, you normally do not have a house to pay. You don't have a family. You don't have, I don't know, other obligations to attend to. You're basically free. And so what I suggest doing is to throw yourself into the company and not just doing your 40 hours of work or whatever your week hours are, but go a little bit beyond that. If there are optional meetings from the human resources people, why not attending? If they maybe have some kind of outlook in the next few months, attend and maybe even discuss. Or if other tech branches, like if you have a software developer and operations people present something, attend. If there's discussion, attend. Contest, attend. I suggest generally saying yes to all these things and just sometimes say no. I would do that for the first, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 years, because it's a lot of time you will invest, and burnout, it's a thing. So you shouldn't go too far, but you should never stop looking for other contexts and how other people work, because then you can broaden your horizon and see what you like, what you do not like, where your career should go, and which direction you should specialize yourself in the next 10, 20, whatever years. And so the first thing what you should target, in our opinion, is growing and getting experience by doing the things we just presented. Okay, next up is now you're feeling new and you know, okay, I'm the newbie. I own it because I will not get rid of this label too early. But how does the student day actually differ from the working day? And for me in university, I barely took any notes because especially at the end of my student career, I only worked for the exam and the practices we need to pass to actually do the exam. And all the stuff that was said in the lecture that was not relevant for the exam was, well, you didn't listen. And what I discover now in work time is that when you attend meetings where they discuss certain technicalities, and you know half of the things that are discussed, you maybe can remember all the things that you already knew, like the 50%, because that you understand and you know how to organize and you know what they mean and how they are all connected. But the other half, it's just gibberish for you. You don't really understand how everything beyond what you know is connected, how it fits to the great picture. It just goes into your head and leaves your head directly. So I always have my notebook with me and a pen, and I'm writing basically everything down. It's not always pretty, because it's basically just an idea dump. And later on, you have to structure your notes. But it's a good first thing, because after the meeting, when you think a little bit more about just what happened, you may think, wait, what was actually the goal of this whole thing? And then you just look it up in your notes. Or for example, if you start to doing the actual work and you come to a to a halt because you have a problem you never saw before, what do? You look up in your notes, did they say something about this maybe? And then you recognize, oh, that word could match with what I have a problem. And so you just Google a little bit around and maybe have a good luck. So taking notes is, it's not worth gold, but it's very, very nice to have. And also what you should do is to always challenge yourself. Don't go too far because, as I said, burnout is a thing, but just sometimes even overestimate your abilities, at least in university and now in work. It's basically the same, that when you overestimate yourself and you know, okay, this work I can do in 40 minutes. And then you say to your boss, basically, I will do it in 20. You are pressured to change the way you work. And for example, back then, I always executed the run Java, test Java, whatever, all manually. And of course, sometimes you mistype something, you have to re-enter, blah, blah, blah. And so what I did back then is to start to automate things. And this this speeded up the whole process significantly. But I wouldn't never have automated any of that if I wouldn't have experienced the pressure to do so. And so you should challenge yourself, even if there's a chance you will fail. And I failed also sometimes. That's just a part of the low learning experience. So you can't avoid that all the time. And last is that what people sometimes want from you is not really what they need. This can be the customer, this can be a colleague, whatever. The difference to the student day is that your professor had a very good idea what the actual work is and what should be the result. He even may have a test suit ready to test against your code, and if everything is green afterwards, he says, well, okay, pass. In work, when you do work for someone, he may not know what he needs. He just knows that he needs something. But does he really need a new program? Does he just need some different configuration? Does he even use the right tool for whatever he's trying to achieve? So that is then sometimes your job to find out what's needed, so you don't do work that is basically useless. Because if you waste time, this basically means that you waste money, because most certainly there are projects to work at that have specified tasks that you should do with that time, and time is sparse when you work full-time. Okay, and that's for my notes on this slides. Paolo,
yeah,
let's
I
hear.
will take over and finish up with the difference between student life and working life. So the next point we have is calendar and work time. And why is that? Well, the calendar is just different. Just think about how your student life is structured. Usually is lecture period, then it's like preparation for the exam, then you give the exam, you get the result, and then once again lecture, and so on and so forth. During your work day and your work period is a little bit different. And why? Well, because of course you do not have really an exam and you do not really have lectures. So sometimes it's a little bit less predictable to kind of know where the workload should focus. Because when you're a student, you kind of guess which are the subject that requires more of your attention because of personal interest or because you know it's a little bit harder to grasp for you. Whereas when you work, it's not always that the case. Sometimes you are faced with some challenge that were just unpredictable. So you didn't account that in your time plan. That requires you to be, of course, flexible in a way. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean that everything you should do during your workday is random. More or less, there's a path, like a timeline on what you're doing. Like, you know that your project has this starting point. You know that the next feature you have to develop or write is this one. So you know that you have to focus on that. And then you can kind of say, yes, I will take care also for some extra slot for things that can happen during, of course, your daily life. And that's why we have this point. And the last one we have is the accountability, and what we mean by accountability. Well, as I mentioned also before, when you study, you are focused on your path. So basically, your study course, like your study journey, basically. So it's more focused kind of on yourself. Whereas when you're in a project or like you're working in like full-time on a job, usually you're not working alone. You are working in a team. And that means that accountability is a little bit more spread ahead, not only for yourself, but also for others. And that's why actually you have kind of sometimes different methods when you are studying by yourself rather than when you're doing a project with some other people. You have to need to find some technique or like method to synchronize with them. For example, agile methodologies are kind of helpful in that. For example, with daily stand-up, where you just share what you did during your day, what's your plan for the day. And so in this way, you are sharing basically your knowledge to the whole team, and the whole team is doing likewise with you. Another way to take care of accountability is what our next topic is about, which is clean code. And well, why clean code is somehow helpful and it matters for accountability. So first of all, what is clean code? Clean code in a sentence can be summed up with what you can see here. So clean code is code that is easy to understand and easy to change. So what do we mean by easy to understand and easy to change? Well, to understand, first of all, it's easy to understand not only for yourself, but also for others. And so basically, we mean that whoever is going to read your code should be able to understand what you meant by writing this piece of code and why you did that way. And regarding the easy to change, well, of course, if we want to write a good piece of software, usually we want to make it flexible enough that if any external change, which can be a requirement, can be maybe model change, can be easily implemented in whatever you already had in front of you. Well, this already kind of covers why should you write clean code. But I particularly like this quote, which is programming is not only for the machine, it is also a language between programmers. It's pretty clear here. You have to write something that it's not going to be your own possession. Of course, sometimes you feel like, I write this piece, it's kind of my baby or whatever, but it's something more, most of the time, meant to be shared with others. So it's not that you are the only one taking care of that component or that piece of software. And that's why you have to think about that. That means that it should be written in a way that the other can understand, take care of that, and even pass on. So it doesn't mean that you are the owner and you will be the owner forever for this piece of software. And actually, regarding the how it was helpful for me, well, I have a good example in my current project. So we recently taken over a component which was not ours. So it was made from some external company. And there were some classes here that were transformers. So they were just doing some transformation of some models. But whoever thought, yeah, it was a cool idea to do so, they named the classes Bumblebee, Wheeljack, Optimus Prime. So you can guess why, because they are transformers. And yeah, I mean, as an Easter egg, maybe it's super fun. I cannot deny that. But for a developer, that makes everything just harder. Because what you would like to aim for is to make it understandable for others. That's why when we took over this piece of software, we had to kind of break it down. Of course, the naming wasn't the only issue. There were also some others, and they needed to be taken care of. But if the basis was quite solid, then you could have saved time, definitely, and not spent so much on just understanding what was in front of you. And I'd say another good point about this clean code argument is that you should take it with a little bit grain of salt, in the sense that you shouldn't use it as absolute truth. Sometimes there is just software that is not meant to be in a way. And what I mean with that is that sometimes you just maybe take over some components that are going to be thrown away pretty soon, because for whatever decision, you know that you will have to start from scratch and just redo the whole thing. That is one clear case where it's not worth to refactor everything, to try to understand every single piece and every single line, because you know that it will be eventually thrown away. Or again, if you know that, let's say, a feature will soon come and just add it to a certain component, sometimes maybe it's kind of not flexible enough to allow that, so you will have to either break it down, or sometimes it's even, let's say, the best solution kind of is to keep it like it is and just add a new feature because there's already the structure that allows that. So that, in order to say that clean code is a good, let's say, strategy and should be part of your own techniques as developer, software engineer, and IT world-centric employee, but it doesn't mean that that must be the absolute truth for your piece of software that you're going to write. Okay, that basically concludes this part of clean code. And of course, I would like to invite you, if you want to know more, you can absolutely find resources online. And yeah, that's it for this topic. So let's dig into the stories, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, story. First is mine. And if I look on the clock, we have plenty of time, more than we had planned to have. Great. That's a good fit because the stories can get long. The first one I have is actually from my, what was it? From my first 2 months in Cloudflight. I was very new to basically everything, and also new to the position as a site reliability engineer. I knew some things, maybe a little bit more, but the specific tools we used, the people that you need to contact with certain problems, yada, 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 the whole thing of what's more than just writing code, I had no experience in. But I had a keen eye on the support channel in our chat tool. And one time during the week, there was a message like, all the services at our customer are down. And I, of course, didn't know anything what I should do with this message at first. Then I thought, and I knew, okay, I can't do anything. I don't have a clue what the customer actually is, what he uses, where he is, how I get to the machines. I don't know anything of that. But what you can do is then you can get the people who know stuff, who can take care of the problem, and you just work around these people. So basically, if you can't help to fix the problem itself, manage the problem. And so in this case, I was the first one to actually read the message. And so I asked in our team chat who could be qualified for that. And I think 2 or 3 people said yes, they can help. And so I got them in contact with our side of the customer contact and made sure they have the URLs where the stuff is deployed, have access to the stuff where it's deployed to the machines. And sometimes you could even think about something like talking to their actual projects these people should work on, to talk to to their team leads, to their project leads in that moment, to say, I know he should be at your project right now, but we have a major incident at customer X. So he can't help right now with the normal daily work. And basically just so they know where their people are. And so what you can do is to manage everything around these people, so they have a clear head only for the problem. And that you can basically do within the first 2 months of being hired, and with a little bit of confidence. Of course, that's also a thing to just step in, even if you don't have any specific knowledge about the problem. The second story is then a bit more structural, because it's more about how you debug actually, and how you solve problems. And as in the context of site reliability engineer, we like to call it a root cause analysis. And so, for example, I had 2 projects. One was a specific pipeline build that just didn't work. After some change that had no obvious impact on anything, the pipeline just broke completely off. And the only guy who knew how the pipeline fully worked retired. So there's also a problem of track factor. Or if you say in more positive light, someone of your company wins in a lotto, and if he leaves, what then? And so we had the problem of a pipeline not being ready, being up to our standards, and but the release was due, so very stressful. We could get some kind of a temporary fix to work pretty fast, but the real problem still resisted, and we tried a few things. But after a while, if it just doesn't work in somewhat of a time, then you need to lie the crowbar away, because the crowbar approach or brute force approach certainly didn't work just by trying random things out, just Googling random things and see what sticks. Sometimes this just doesn't work. And another case was that I created an operating system image for a PC, a special one, and then I tried to install the operating system to the machine, but it never worked. And my colleague always said, well, it works on my machine, like the classic student sentence. You would normally hear it only in university. You hear it also in the work environment. It works on my machine. What do you have different? And I didn't have anything different. I compiled this, the stuff the same way he did. I built the stuff the same way he did. I used even the same USB sticks as he did. So why didn't it work on my machine? Because I was assuming that a certain option in BIOS was set, which it wasn't. But that's the thing, you only find out after 3-4 hours of searching everywhere and wondering, why doesn't it work? Jesus Christ, can't be that hard. And so to come to the structural side of this story now is that if you have an incident and you already know this is gonna be a big one, we're not gonna solve that problem in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. We need much more time for that problem. Then what you should do is, again, take your handy notebook and pen and write down what you know about the problem. Just simple things, basically anything. What you know is basically your done to-dos or the stuff you already know. What you do not know yet, so some sort of to-dos, what the things you should check in the future. And also a list of assumptions, but only assumptions you can't verify yourself. Never assume anything unless checking. But of course, if you can't check it yourself, then you have to trust some people, and that's fine. But if you assume things that you could easily verify yourself, don't do it, just verify the thing. Because like with the BIOS setting, it will take you hours just because you checked one setting. And the last one then is to note everything down that could be also relevant. Like, for example, with the first story, the URLs, maybe some kind of where do I find which sort of information that I already know I might need. Or which people have worked with that kind of problem in the past. Just general stuff that comes to your mind, but it's not directly related to this current problem. So what you should do is take notes, be careful, and also be slow with this approach. And this was also a thing that I said with the pipeline stuff, that after so many crowbar approaches that all in the end failed because temporarily it just worked, but that's not what you want. You need to say, hey, boss, I'm sorry, we just need the time for that. It's not a thing that's gonna solve easily. And then you gotta sit down and take notes and think and do a small step, slowly but surely. And in the end, eventually, hopefully, you will find the fault that causes the error, that causes the failure. Okay, that's with my stories. Then, Paolo.
Yes. So now I will tease you with other two stories, but I hope they will resonate somehow with maybe your personal experience, or maybe you will take something off of them. The first one, I made it, or did I? Well, this is related to the F1 experience that we mentioned before. And well, why I'm saying this. So my first job was in a F1 team, a Formula One team. Specifically, it was in Scuderia Toro Rosso, which is a team based in Italy. And well, you know, when I got the job, I was super excited, and I had so high expectation about Formula One, because I said to myself, well, it's Formula One, it might be on the edge for technology and everything. I was really excited to start, even though it was a new place for me, it was new environment. But, you know, I was excited also to go outside my comfort zone. And then, well, and then not exactly what I expected. Set high expectation, maybe too high, but then what I faced was kind of reality. It's exciting, absolutely. I met so many amazing persons inside the company, and I was happy. I mean, besides the fact that my experience wasn't super long, it was just 1 year, I was grateful for that. And well, why it was a little bit less exciting than what I expected. For a mechanical engineer, I would argue that it's probably one of the most amazing things. You can learn how to design parts. You see your part that are designed and then install into the car that will race on a Sunday race. It's really an amazing feeling. You see what's all the job about behind basically the car, behind the driver and everything. But for IT, so for me personally as a software engineer, it was kind of a down. And because unfortunately, at least my tasks were really basic. So what I ended up doing were mainly stuff for internal purpose. So I ended up doing mainly web application for internal usage. So some web application that maybe were useful for, I don't know, like the testing team. This testing team was just testing some parts, so they need some web app where they can put inside the data that they basically see out of the checking of the parts of the cars. But as I said, as a software developer, it's like, yeah, it's easy. It's not really something that it's so amazing, and it kind of feels like I'm not really doing something super impactful, even though that's not true, because at the end it was using in production. So there were people using your piece of software. And again, feel like it was an amazing experience because I like it. I really learned a lot, not only about the Formula One team and how it works, but also I have some learnings out of my IT experience, and I'm grateful for that. But that, like, what I feel about this story is that don't worry if your first job is not your dream job, even though maybe it feels like it. There's time for that. Like, there is time to improve, and it's a long journey. At the end of the day, you're there to learn stuff, to put yourself in the spot and try to challenge yourself. So that was a good experience for me, and I don't regret it. And last, new starting places. So again, talking about my student experience. When I was a student in university, I had a semester abroad. Specifically, I went to Singapore for a semester. And for me also, that experience was really exciting. I wanted to go there because it was facing something new, going out of my comfort zone, totally awesome. And I remember when I arrived there, it was even New Year's Eve. I arrived there, I exit the plane, I stay in the airport. First thing I did was, calling home. So I called my parents and my family. I told them that I was okay, that the flight went good and everything. And then I just sat there for something like an hour because I was just thinking on myself, what am I doing? I'm in a foreign country, all by myself. I don't speak this language as a native. I do not know anyone from here. Like, what really drives me here? Like, is it really a good decision, the one to come here? And after this hour, when I was thinking about all this stuff, I said to myself, well, it's time to just stand up. So I just stood up. I took a walk. I changed some of my money. Then I took a cab and I went to the place that I rented basically for my whole period in there. And at the end of this semester, I can really tell you, it was an amazing experience. And I like it so much. People there were amazing. I met so many persons. And I also got the experience of a new learning style, which is far different from university in Italy. So it was all learning experience for me. And I'd like to basically saying that this is not something that was only for the student life. It actually happened for me also in my working life. As you know, I'm now based in Amsterdam. And when I moved to Amsterdam, I had the same feeling. Like, I'm all by myself here, now where to go, what to do. new language. I didn't know anyone. And I was like, damn, that will be tough. But I had this experience as a student that helped me. Like, I told myself, you know how this feels, you know what to do. You just have to dig in. Just dig in, get to go and just experience as much as you can. And well, after a year and a half, I'm still here in Amsterdam. I'm enjoying my time here. My colleagues are pretty amazing, and I'm pretty happy with the company. So, you know, all in all, I feel like all this experience told me it's really about taking the first step, even though, you know, sometimes it's scary. Sometimes really you feel like it's not the good choice what you did. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of starting, and then you will see where it leads you to. Okay, thank you for listening to our stories, and this concludes our talk.
Yep. Thank you so much, Paolo, Michael, for sharing like real life stories, right? Like, and how does it work, and tailoring it towards our students, the content. Cloudflight is a very interesting company, right? So you create products for your customers, right? So as per my imagination, you have like a big conversion of like different products coming out, right? And different teams working across, right? Like different teams working together, but across, you know, in a metrics format. So I was wondering if you could describe, you know, on just very quickly, because I'm looking at the time and we don't have as much, you know, time for this. Like, if you look at one project, right? Can you describe, you know, the different collaborations between the multiple teams and things that needed to happen, right? So if we take the cycle of like DevOps, right? So there is the team, the way I imagine it, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is the team that actually creates the code, and there is another team that actually deploys the code or implement it. So can you give an example of like, how does it actually work at Cloudflight in this case, right?
I can do a bit of this, the answer. So what how we say it in English? What was very curious for me when I started the site reliability engineer role is that you are indeed operations guy, the one with the virtual machines, the guy who's always in the basement talking to his machines. Of course, this role changed a bit, but when you're in university, you basically always hear DevOps, and you never hear from operations, because you always think the people from operations are already in DevOps, because, well, it says DevOps. And so what we created, basically, my team last year or before, was the Cloudflight build pipeline, where basically a new project comes in, the project lead via a certain web UI creates a new project and gets all his infrastructure he needs is getting created in the background, like GitLab repositories, the pipelines needed, artifactories where to publish certain code, or even Docker images, and also some other additional services. So what we do then is we provide the software developers with stuff, so they don't have to think about all that and can do their coding work.
Thank you, Michael, for exemplifying this, because to me, like, I work on a business side, you know, so for me, it's pretty difficult to grasp it. Like, usually, you know, we have the software developers that are so confident about their own code, and then they build the code. But the way, like, Paolo went into the importance of actually clean code, because eventually you will push your clean code towards somebody else that will deploy it, you know, and they need to understand what on earth you actually wrote in there. I can imagine that it's pretty difficult to align those different teams, right, Paolo?
Yeah, I feel like it's really training on synergize all this team. as you can imagine. And I feel like, Michael, you can also kind of enter in this discussion. But for example, we work together in one project, the current project that we're currently working on, actually. And there's a good, like, not that hard boundary somehow. You can communicate easily, even though we're also in remote location and everything, but also the team doesn't expect to work by itself like a separate entity. It kind of is expected to mesh all together. So when there's some problem in the pipeline, you will then go to a DevOps team, our DevOps team in the project, and ask them, hey, this is something that is not going good. Please, can you take a look, or can you help me out on this? But also for them, I guess they expect us to know also something, and we do not start from totally ground zero. So at least I feel like we have a good mashup, because we also know something about the other field. So it's not totally separate. So me personally, for example, in this project, I'm also deploying myself, and I'm actually checking directly our Kubernetes cluster if it's all fine and everything. So I'm not absolutely a DevOps engineer, but I actually picked up something about that. So I can at least know if there's something that it's harder for me to understand. I can still say with a little certain degree of certainty, this is probably something that I cannot really fix. Can you help me out in this specific case?
Mm. Thank you, Paolo. I would like to take the questions from the chat. How do you balance your workload with the need to keep up to date with the new technologies in your field of expertise?
I can answer that one because I have an example right in my mind, because I just read through the questions. What I experienced at the customer that Paolo referenced to was that actually the customer had great vision for the next year. So they actually had the requirement for us to use new things. Even if this wouldn't happen, we still have internal projects where you can try yourself out. It's a thing of Cloudflight to motivate people to try things out, and maybe you will fail. This will most certainly come, that you will fail something, you will create some sort of problems. But a lot of that will be learned lessons, a lot of that. And we just heard it today in a big meeting with all of the company, that we do not want to make Hello World projects all the time. And then the customer comes and says, hey, can you do this real project for me with this technology? And then we say, I don't know. I did Hello World. But what we then want to do is directly start with an internal project that actually does something and has an impact if it fails. Or directly with the customer project also, but I'm not 100% sure here. But we try to do the new stuff all the time. For example, we use a lot of Java. Now we're trying to get Kotlin everywhere. I think this process is a few years old, but still it keeps going. Just one example. Yep.
Okay. Maybe I can add up here, because I remember from my previous experience when I just started working during my first job, actually my supervisor made me, and I was in the startup field, right? So I had to search for different startups out there. So we were having this weekly on Fridays, like these meetings, and he was making me come up every week with 3 new companies or technologies out there that I liked for that week. So that made me, I had the Techcrunch app installed on my phone. So every morning when I was still in bed, I was just scrolling and seeing okay, what are the news in the market? So this is a nice way to actually keep yourself up to date with what's going on out there, right? Like just reading tech news.
Yeah.
Just saying.
just to say something, because I saw something, if you have a family and starting a job, that's exactly what you could do. If you have 40 hours a week, that's a lot, especially if you have a family. What you could do then is to have a RSS news reader, for example, and just from time to time on your app, just read some, for example, Hacker newsletter or CNCF stuff, and just read a bit there too. This also greatly helps to broaden your horizon, what's out there. Just because it came up.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Michael. Can you give us some examples of process you have to onboard as smooth as possible people with only few expertises?
Well, I read this question before, and I was wondering, what does smooth mean? What does smooth mean in terms of, so the people don't get too overloaded with the complexity, or does it mean smooth in terms of that as few as possible, and let's hope no problems at all occur? So I don't know if I can really answer that question, because I don't know what the question actually is. If it's about...
Jordan, are you there?
I think you can even talk to us.
Yeah, so unmute yourself, Jordan, and maybe you can... A smooth would be to avoid overloaded the new candidates.
Oh, candidates are already hired colleagues, because candidates wouldn't really get... okay, new colleague. That's a good thing. What we have with the Cloudflight build pipeline, that this is actually a big pill to swallow at the beginning, but you don't really have to. Only if you really want to know everything and how everything is connected, and some things troubleshoot stuff yourself, then you need a lot of knowledge. But if you're just starting new, just want to write some Kotlin code, then you can't do that. And if you have problems, you have your in-team colleagues. I guess Paolo knows that a little bit better, that perspective. And of course, you can always come to the site reliability engineer team. I don't know how the onboarding is from a software developer view.
Yeah, I can tell you that at the beginning, like, it's actually a good example how I started in Cloudflight, because one of the technology I had to use was Kafka, for example, Apache Kafka, and I didn't know anything about that. So, and also the project was Java based, and my skill on Java were stuck on Java 6, I believe, the last time that I used that. And we were suddenly using Java 11. So yeah, kind of a big jump. And luckily, I'd say within Cloudflight, well, you have really good colleagues that are patient enough to help you out with stuff that you don't know. And as also Michael mentioned before, it's a matter also of trial and error. So in here, you have the space to actually try out, and it's okay also if you do not do everything perfectly, because at the end of the day, it's your first job. So really, or if not your first job, like you're still in your early career. So no one is really expecting you to immediately be the one that takes over all the responsibility and it's, capable of doing everything perfectly and without any, flawlessly, basically. So that's why at the end, you can help whoever comes after in the project just how the other did with you. So by letting them try, letting them do stuff, and now that you have more experience, you see basically that they kind of do the same mistake as you did. So you know how to lead them.
Yeah, and actually what you just mentioned, it's very relevant to our students, because within the 42 network and at Codam, they actually study only C language. Mm-hmm. And then they go all of a sudden in a company, and then they need to deliver on Python. Oh, Fantastic. So this is exactly your example, right?
Yeah.
So the question that actually George had is like, how long did it take you to feel comfortable or confident after starting your first job? Like Paolo, I think that would be a good question for you.
Yeah, it's actually a good question. I mean, if we want to be completely honest, I just put this into my mind. Like, the thing is, you are there to learn, and every day you try kind of to learn something. At the beginning, as we just said, like, comfortability was zero, really nada. And then you start doing the first task, you kind of accomplish that. Of course, you're guided and everything, and you go with the second one. Maybe with the third one, you're already independent with this small task. And really, after, I guess, for me, probably a couple of months, I was able to do not huge tasks, but I was able to do everything kind of independently. Even though, of course, there's always someone if you don't feel like you know everything, which is normal. So I'd say it's something that you don't even think about.
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, Michael. I'm just looking at the time, and I'm very aware of that we actually passed the end time. It was supposed to be 5 p.m. I think you have a couple of more slides for us, isn't it? Just two very quickly ones.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not a sad thing, but it's unfortunate we couldn't answer all questions. But that's a good transition to what's next, because contact us if you have questions, and if you are interested in getting in touch with us about how can I start at Cloudflight, what could my role look like. You see a selection here. And also Cloudflight is very flexible on the times, so that's why you have here full-time, part-time, or just have a quick internship to look around. You can always approach Paolo and me, or the jobs@cloudflight.io email, and get in contact with us and ask us more questions, especially that ones that hasn't been answered now. And that's basically it. Well, thank you for your questions, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you guys for making the time to talk to our students and for sharing your experiences, like real life experiences, right? You can find a bunch of talks on YouTube about DevOps and so on, but nobody actually is telling you what's happening behind the curtain. So one thing that I would like to do is actually the usual with CodamX's and any events that we do. I would like everybody to unmute themselves and do a round of applause for Paolo and Michael. Can we do that? Everybody unmute themselves. Yes, yes.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you.
That's a good idea.
Yes.